Stutthof Concentration Camp was one of the deadliest sites of the Second World War. It was guarded by a number of evil SS men and women who made the prisoners' lives a misery. They established reigns of terror over them, with executions being carried out on a daily basis, and within the barbed wire fences of Stutthof, around 65,000 prisoners never made it out of the camp alive. There were a series of trials that took place after the war, and many men and women were condemned to death during this, and the executions of the guards took place on Biskupia Gorka, a huge hill in Gdansk. On the hill were 20,000 people who witnessed the executions, which occurred on a large gallows so everyone could see. One of the women who was brought to the gallows that day was Gerda Steinhoff, who was a woman who had came to Stutthof late in the conflict and had answered an SS call to work at the camp. But she became known for her evil and brutality, but at the age of just 24 she was executed for her work at Stutthof. Join us today as we look at the execution of Gerda Steinhoff, and to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Gerda Steinhoff was born on the 29th of January 1922 inside of Danzig or Gdansk. She had a normal upbringing, and while she was a teenager she worked as a housemaid on a farm near to her home. But then following leaving school from 1939, she worked inside of a bakery in Danzig, but then Gerda took a new job working on the trams as a conductor. As the Second World War was waging on, she continued working in Danzig and got married in 1944, and then she had a child. However, that year she also answered the call that the Nazis put out, asking for new guards to work inside of the concentration camps. They asked inside of many towns, as many former guards had been drafted to the front lines to fight the Soviets and the Allies, as the war had turned against the Germans. However, Gerda Steinhoff then trained at the Stutthof Concentration Camp near to her home, and she would join the staff there after a short period of training. On the 1st of October 1944, Gerda Steinhoff became a block lighter in, or a block leader, who was in control of a group or block of women and prisoners. Stutthof, where she worked, was a camp which opened following the German invasion of Poland, and as soon as the Germans invaded, people were being rounded up and were sent there. The first inmates were there to build the camp, and they built the barrack buildings, and Stutthof changed over a number of years, until in 1942 it became a concentration camp. The initial site was surrounded by barbed wire fences, and there were 8 barracks and also a bunkhouse for SS guards, and then the camp got bigger and grew to a huge capacity, with a new site being made next to the old one. The new camp had 30 barracks and also a crematorium and gas chambers, which were added, and the final solution was carried out at Stutthof. The camp staff was made up of German SS guards, and as mentioned, many people including women were enlisted at the site to work and to manage the women prisoners. Alongside Gerda Steinhoff were other women such as Eva Paredes, Jenny Wanda Parkman and Herta Bofa. The prisoners of Stutthof came from a number of countries, and a huge number of them were sent from Auschwitz and were deported there to work. The conditions at the camp were incredibly tough though, and dozens of thousands of prisoners died from starvation and disease which went around Stutthof, with typhus epidemics sweeping through the camp in winter 1942 and also 1944. The prisoners who were considered too weak to work were then sent to the small gas chambers at Stutthof, with thousands dying inside the chamber before they were taken to the crematorium. Executions were carried out there on a daily basis, and also doctors took the lives of weak inmates using phenol injections, and also a number of prisoners were drowned in the mud by the guards and were beaten to death with weapons. Prisoners were shipped out for forced labour at a number of Nazi businesses who helped the war effort, and these prisoners were forced to work incredibly hard. An aircraft factory was even created at Stutthof, and there were a number of sub-camps also. But then as the war was coming to an end, the evacuation of Stutthof took place. Around 50,000 prisoners were shipped out of the camp, and many were marched towards the sea, and once they arrived there, German SS guards executed them as they marched into the sea, shooting them with their machine guns. This happened a number of times, and then further executions on death marches took place, with it's believed 25,000 prisoners dying during the evacuation effort. Gerda Steinhoff was a guard at Stutthof who got involved in the killing process, and she became known for taking part in prisoner selections, and she would also send many to their deaths in the gas chambers. The Nazis valued her horrific work, and she was then promoted to an SS Oberaufseherin, and was considered a senior female guard, and she was a senior overseer, and other women served underneath her. She was on the 1st of December 1944 reassigned to another subcamp at Stutthof, but one of these was a Bromberg Ost camp, found 105 miles south of Danzig. Whilst here she received a medal for her service to the Nazi Reich, but Steinhoff was also known for being a brutal and savage overseer who would whip and beat the prisoners. But whilst the evacuations were taking place, Gerda Steinhoff decided to flee Stutthof in the subcamp, and she returned home to her family life. But the authorities would soon catch up with her. Following the liberation of the camp, a number of guards were arrested following guard lists being found, and Gerda Steinhoff was arrested by Polish officials on the 25th of May 1945. She was then interrogated and was tried in the first Stutthof trial, along with many other SS female guards and staff, and during the trial many witnesses came forward about her actions at various subcamps. They told of her brutal beatings, and also that she was involved in the selections with prisoners being sent to their deaths, and she was considered a sadist who would assault and abuse inmates on an hourly basis. But what surprised the judges was that Steinhoff had been a guard for only around a year, but then the war would come to an end, but in just this short time she got involved in a number of horrific crimes, and at the end of the day she was just a 24-year-old young mother who caused immense brutality. But along with a number of other women, she was sentenced to death for her involvement in the selections and in crimes against humanity. Gerda Steinhoff was then imprisoned for a short time, until on the 4th of July 1946 she was taken to Biskupia Gorka Hill in Gdansk, which was a huge mound. On this hill stood a number of huge wooden gallows, where they would be executed on, and the female guards were led out in front of the crowd. Gerda Steinhoff and the other condemned men and women were taken out and were told to climb on a number of trucks. Gerda Steinhoff was helped onto the vehicle, and then was told to sit on a stool on the back whilst a noose was thrown over the gallows and was prepared. The executioner then read out the death sentence, and she was then stood on the stool, and the noose was secured around her neck. Then the guards gave the instructions for the trucks to drive off. The rope then went taut, and then Gerda Steinhoff was executed and was left on the gallows in front of the huge crowd, and she was executed on the same gallows as the male head guard, Johann Pauls. Gerda Steinhoff was, despite her age, a senior guard at Stutthof Concentration Camp, and she was just 24 when she was executed in front of a huge crowd. She was a woman who was also not there too long, but she was known for her violence that resulted in a number of inmates being killed, and she also selected prisoners to go to their deaths. For this she was found guilty of crimes against humanity, and she is remembered alongside other evil female guards, such as Elizabeth Falkenrath, Irma Grazer, Johanna Bormann, as one of the most despicable war criminals of the Second World War. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.